Hello, my friend. Leanne Hayden here, and welcome to this week's episode of the Beautiful Bag podcast. This is going to be another one of the lost episodes from back in 2021. So if you're watching this on video, you're going to tell how old it is because of how blonde my hair is. And it was recorded back when I lived in Manhattan. So you have the Manhattan skyline there too. So anyways, this week it's going to be with Brianna. The Laughing Stoma is how she goes. That's her name out on Instagram. So make sure you go over there and follow her. And I hope you guys and girls really like this episode. Let's get going.
Be strong.
Well, welcome everybody to this week's The Beautiful Bag podcast. I have a special guest, Brianna, who is 27 years old, joining us today, and she's going to share her story. Right now, she is in the Netherlands, so it's nighttime for her or late afternoon for her, and it's morning for us over here in the U.S. She's originally from the U.S. and moved over to the Netherlands. We were just discussing that, and I think it's amazing at 27 to be able to just travel the world and live places. Brianna, welcome.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I've never been on a podcast before, so it's really cool to have the opportunity to share my story on a different platform other than Instagram and Facebook, where I have my Laughing Stoma account. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And you just mentioned it. So everybody, her Instagram is called The Laughing Stoma. And I was just telling her, she does these reels with her bag and it's got the face. I'm trying to point it out. You have to go over to her Instagram and just see it. And she educates, she's educating you on, your stoma and your, how to live in an ostomy. And it's a riot. You guys just have to go over and check out her Instagram for sure. Brianna, let's get into the story. What happened? What led you down this journey?
Yeah, so I have had my permanent ileostomy for over 3 years now. So I got it in November of 2017. Basically, for several years, I had been having a lot of gastrointestinal issues, and no one really knew what was going on because I would have these like flare-ups, and they'd often land me in the hospital. And they could never really figure out what was wrong. Most of the times, I'd find out that I was just really constipated. And after a while, I would feel better, after a couple of weeks. But in September 2015, that's when things started to just become chronic. I ended up with appendicitis. And for some reason, everything just went downhill from there. But they still didn't really know what was going on until spring of 2017, when I developed rectal and pelvic organ prolapses. And that's when we knew that something was definitely going on. And that's when I was diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a genetic connective tissue disease. And that basically you have faulty collagen. With EDS, there are multiple different there are different subtypes of it, and the one I have is called hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And since collagen is found in nearly all organs, it can cause a lot of problems. And for me, it has affected my GI tract the most. Basically, I'd say several months after that, that's when I ended up with my ostomy, because once I developed the prolapses, things just seemed pretty hopeless. I had been on so many different medications. I tried different diets. I was also doing pelvic floor physical therapy, and it just got to the point where just something surgical needed to be done. And then I ended up with my stoma, who I named Stella. And so a reversal has never been possible for me. So it was it's been permanent. And I used to think it was the worst thing in the world, like long before I had an ostomy. When I first learned what it was, I just thought it was this horrible thing. But it's really not that bad. And I forget I have mine half the time, and I'm really grateful for it. It's improved the quality of my life significantly. Yeah.
I love that story. It's, I loved how you just let it into, you thought it was something horrible. And I think every time I talk to people, the more I talk to people, that's the biggest issue, right? So I've known people, and I've heard stories of people they would rather give up life than be in an ostomy. And hence the reason why I created this podcast, because I think that our stories are so important to know that it's really not that bad. You know, like you said, you forget you have it half the time. But I mean, you were going in and out of having pain and having issues, and this is permanent. I mean, you permanently had an ostomy at the age of what, 23?
I think it was
23, 24?
24, actually. Yeah.
24. So you're young. So 24 years old. Now you're in an ostomy for the rest of your life. How has it been these last 3 years having one?
So it was definitely, it was a difficult adjustment because no matter how many, like I think that I'm pretty lucky in the sense that I had months to like mentally prepare for my ostomy. Like some people, they will unexpectedly end up with one. They'll be in some traumatic accident and suddenly they wake up with a bag. And I cannot imagine how difficult that must be. So for me, I did a lot of researching and watching YouTube videos and reading blogs, but nothing can really, you cannot prepare yourself for the moment that you wake up from surgery and you see your stoma. And not that it's necessarily a bad thing, but it's really weird and you can really prepare for that. And, it's an adjustment and it changes your life. You have to do regular bag changes. I don't really think that it limits what I can do, but I do have to be careful with what I eat. And especially like right after surgery, you have to be super careful with what you eat. But for the first month or so, it was a bit hard getting used to living with an ostomy. And but I think overall the recovery went quite well. But
what was the difficult pieces? What was the difficult part for you in the first couple of months?
Yeah, basically just getting used to having a bag of poop like on my abdomen, because it's just, I mean, it's not really normal to have your intestines sticking out. And I remember the first couple of bag changes, I just got so queasy, like looking at my stoma, and it was just really weird. And that was difficult to adjust to. And I was also always afraid that I was going to hurt it. And I felt like I had to be super careful. And I was also wearing a one-piece system at the time. And I now wear a two-piece system, but it always felt like my stoma was poking out a bit. And I just felt like I always had to protect it. I was just afraid of it getting damaged somehow. But, now I just forget I have it. So I was super aware of my stoma back then. And yeah, it was just a bit really difficult to, adjust to suddenly needing to live with a stoma. And bag changes used to take me forever, or even just emptying my bag. I think the first few weeks that I had my stoma, I don't know how, but it took me like 30 minutes to just empty my bag. Like, I don't really know how, but I just spent so long emptying it, and bag changes took me forever. And this sounds so silly now, but I thought that I needed to wear sterile gloves when changing my ostomy bag, because when you think about it, there's part of, one of your internal organs is sticking out. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember I had my now husband, he was my boyfriend at the time. He and his dad were out searching for sterile gloves at CVS because I thought I needed to wear them, which like, no.
Yeah. Now you know.
Yeah.
Now you know. I mean, but back then we don't know, right? Like we could, like you said, you can do all the research you want, but there's not a whole ton out there for people to say, what is it like? What's it like? And I hear you. I remember the bags they send you home in the hospital in, they should not do that. I mean, they're one pieces, they're clear, you can see everything. It's just like, no, they should get us ready for our little 2-piece bags, the flanges on it, everything's covered up. You don't see through the bags. Like it doesn't have to be, what it is. But again, I hear you on trying to protect it and thinking that it's going to get hurt. I remember the first time I went out and, after surgery, it was a couple weeks later, we went out to dinner and we were standing there, we were standing at a bar, and I was so worried somebody was going to bump into me. And if they bumped into me, it would rip apart. Like I thought it was going to just rip off my body or something. Like I remember having that feeling. So I get it, of feeling like, oh, I got to protect it. Now I'm just like, oh, this is really cool. I'm like the Walking Dead. I can see what's going on inside. Like I can see what's going on inside my body. Like I can see what my body does because it breathes.
Yeah. I I will admit, I still sort of have that though. Like if I'm in a situation where, someone's about to bump into me, I think my hands will just like instinctively go over my stoma, but I'm just not as like hyper aware of it as I used to be. Like I know that it's going to be okay. It's not, not going to suddenly get severely damaged from just bumping into something.
Yep.
So,
Yep. And I even remember hot, like showers, and I loved hot showers. And I was like, oh, can I do can a hot shower hit this? Like, is it going to burn it? Because, nobody teaches you, nobody talks to you about that stuff, and you're like, oh no, I can take a hot shower. I can do what I want to do with it. Cause I mean, I actually shower without my bag on because I'm in a colostomy bag. So I can see more what's going on, so, but yeah. So, all right. 3 years, you're in your ostomy, you get through the first few months. What have you done with your life since then in the last 3 years?
Yeah, so I got my ostomy in November of 2017, and my husband and I moved to Germany it was July of 2018. And so soon after moving to Germany, I got my first full-time job. I worked as an HR assistant. But basically the time between like when I got my ostomy, between then and then like moving to Germany, I didn't like work or anything. I still just, it took me a while to like fully recover from the surgery, and I didn't really want to start a job yet when I knew that we were going to be moving over to Europe. So I started working in Germany, but then a couple months after I started working, I got really sick again. And basically, when I had my surgery back in 2017, the surgeon had left my colon and rectum intact. And I ended up getting a lot of problems from that. So what happens when your colon and rectum are left intact, or even if just your rectum is left intact, there's still mucus that's being produced. And it's a bit funny because the main purpose of that is to make it easier for stool to move along the GI tract. So it's kind of like they don't get the memo that they don't need to do that anymore because they're not. But for me, because of this mucus production, I had a lot of problems with just mucus building up and like being unable to pass it. And essentially I was just as constipated as I was before my ostomy, but this time it was mucus, and it caused so much pain. And after a while, I needed to stop working. I was in the hospital for like 3 or 4 weeks, and eventually I was told that I needed everything else removed. I needed my colon and rectum and anus removed, and I was basically told that due to the specific GI problems that I had that led to my ostomy, and with having a connective tissue disease, that it was pretty much inevitable that I would run into these problems. And so that was really frustrating to like be in a situation that in a way is avoidable if everything had just been taken out at once. And so that has really put my life on hold. I finally had my surgery back in August, but I waited almost a whole year for the surgery.
COVID hit too, so you had to have the surgery. You just had the surgery this past summer.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did wait over a year. In June of 2019 that I needed to have the surgery done. My husband and I, we moved to the Netherlands about a month after I was told that I needed to have the surgery. And so we thought that it would make the most sense to just wait until we're here in the Netherlands to have the surgery done. But then for multiple reasons, it just kept getting delayed. I was bounced from surgeon to surgeon. My case was a bit too complicated. And then because of COVID, things also got postponed. And so finally in August, I had my surgery. I became a member of the Barbie Butt Club.
Welcome to the club.
But it's also been a difficult recovery because my surgeon left my Barbie butt wound open and to close on its own, and that's still open. And I mean, I feel much better than I did. I was quite early after my surgery, and I've definitely been making a lot of progress, but it is still difficult, especially when you're healing from a wound. Like, it's difficult to sit.
You can't sit, you got to sit sideways Or you got to lay
Yeah.
sideways, you got to sit sideways. Yeah, you got to stay off of it so it can close.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
only recently, like last week, finally got like a proper cushion to sit on. For the longest time, like I didn't want to get a pillow pretty bad, like kind of
Yep.
rip the wound open further. And so I thought I would just be fine with like sitting on a regular pillow. But I recently started pelvic floor physical therapy, and my physical therapist was like, no, you should probably get something more like substantial to sit on. And so that it's made sitting less painful. But even then, if I'm sitting for like 10 minutes, I get up and I'm like, ow.
Yeah, it takes a while for that to heal. It takes a while for it to heal. And I think I remember for me it was a good 8 weeks. It was 8 weeks for mine to heal, but he had sutured it up, so it wasn't left to close on its own.
Yeah, that's what I thought was going. I thought my surgeon was going to sew the entire thing shut. And so I was quite shocked when I realized that it was left open. And so in about like 2 weeks ago, it was like 98% closed. And then for some reason, it's gotten a bit bigger. So that's like super frustrating. But yeah, I had not realized that it was actually going to be open and left to close on its own. And it's been like 5.5 months now. So okay. Yeah, everyone was like, it'll close in just a few weeks. And almost 6 months later, it's just getting big.
Boy, well, that's something that that's something that you don't really hear about.
Yeah.
It taking that long. So now your ostomy, Stella, is the name of your stoma. Yeah. You're in an ileostomy, which is like, it's the smaller intestine, right? So how is, what kind of bags do you use? You said you use the 2-part bags, the ones with the flange, and then you just remove the bag and change it that way?
Yep, I use the 2-piece Centura Mio bags from Coloplast, like the opaque gray ones. And I've basically been wearing those since like a couple weeks after my surgery. Because first, I was sent home with those transparent, like 1-piece bags. I think at first I was also using just the 1-piece Centura Mio bags, but then I really wanted to try a 2-piece one. I prefer that because I deal with a lot of pancaking, in which, there's output that gets stuck at the top of the bag. And so the nice thing with this bag is that when I empty my bag, I'll also remove the bag and just kind of clean inside of the wafer, whereas you can't really this bag. And so yeah, I've been using that bag, that system for over 3 years now, and I haven't really had any problems with it. I was also using these barrier strips, which I don't always wear. Typically when my wafer starts to peel a bit, I will put strips on to like extend the wear time. But very recently, as of last week, developed an allergy to them.
Oh, and no.
And I also been having problems with my stoma retracting, and I was having a lot of bag leaks last week. So I also switched to a deep convex wafer instead of, I was wearing a light convex, and I now have a stoma belt at night. So within a week, my products I use, it's changed. Like my routine is so different now. I was using the same things for years, but yeah.
I saw you did a video on Instagram the other day of the look on your face when you wake up without a leak.
Yeah. I my surgeon had I also didn't realize this was going to happen, but he had changed my stoma. And so I've had a lot of problems with it. Like with the 5.5 months that I've had the stoma, I've had more bag leaks than I had, all the years that I had my other stoma. And last week, it was like 4-5 days in a row that I woke up in the middle of the night or very early morning with a bag leak. And there were some nights where it was 2 times it happened. And so I was just so frustrated. And then finally, this was like Saturday, I think, last Saturday, I didn't wake up to a single bag leak, and I was so ecstatic. And I was like, okay, I have to make a TikTok / Instagram reel about this. And yeah, I've had so many leaks, and it's so frustrating. But I've trying some new products now. I'm also using stoma paste in addition to a barrier ring. And so that has helped because I was just so fed up. It was like I would dread going to sleep because it was just inevitable that I'd wake up to a leak.
And so talk about that because life's not always perfect, right? I mean, it's not always perfect, period, as it is. And now, you know, you got a little bit, you're frustrated, you know, you've had this thing, it was going well. Then the first surgeon, they should have just taken everything out because then you wouldn't have to it. And then the next surgeon takes everything out, doesn't suture, you know, doesn't sew you up, changes your stoma. It's frustrating, but you're still living.
Yeah.
You're still
Yeah.
living. You're still living life, you know?
Yeah.
You know, so if there was one thing that you would want to let the listeners know, what would that be?
That really having an ostomy, it's just not as bad as a lot of people think it is. You know, it doesn't smell like a lot of people think that it smells and it doesn't. And it's just, to me, it's just a part of, it's kind of like my nose or so, you know, I'm not really aware of it. And it's not that bad. I used to think it was the worst thing in the world, but I forget I have it half the time. And I mean, not everybody has a positive experience with their ostomy, but for me, I'm very grateful for my stoma. And, you know, it's not the worst thing in the world. Having it is not a death sentence. And, you know, that's why I'm really passionate about raising ostomy awareness, because I used to think an ostomy was like a horrible thing. But it's really not that bad.
And you're doing a great job at bringing awareness to it. You really are. I love following you on Instagram. And if anybody wants to connect with you, how should they do that?
So I have my the Laughing Stoma on Instagram. You know, you can direct message me there. I also have it linked on Facebook. I also have my email, thelaughingstoma@gmail.com. Yeah.
Great. Great. Well, Brianna, thank you for sharing your story and being so vulnerable and open. It's truly appreciated. I know everybody here listening was probably moved at one point, you know, over your story. So thank you so much for sharing with us this week.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. This is fun. Thank you.
These testimonials are representative of my or our experiences, but the exact results and experience will be unique and individual to each person. The information provided herein is not medical advice and is not intended to substitute for the advice of your personal physician or other healthcare providers.